On. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Frank Messina, and like to welcome everyone to the Town of Chatham Historical Commission meeting of June 16th, 2020. Needless to say, we're providing this meeting via remote participation, so I have a message I have to read. This meeting is being recorded and will be available shortly hereafter for scheduled and on-demand viewing on any smartphone or tablet device. If anyone else is recording the meeting, please notify the chairman. Hearing none. Pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the Open Meetings Law, General Law 3080-18, the Governor's March 23, 2020 order imposing strict limitations on the number of people that may gather on place, this meeting of the Chatham Historical Commission is being conducted via remote participation. No in-person attendance of the members of the public will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings as provided in the order. A reminder that persons who would like to listen to this meeting while it's in progress may doing so by calling the phone number 1-508-945-4410. The conference ID is 367-146-40 hashtag. Despite our best efforts, we will not be able to provide for real-time access, and we will post the record of this meeting on the town's website as soon as possible. The procedures are slightly different. I would ask that all members of the board wait until I call on you. I'll try to make sure I get every member of the board to make comments and especially the votes. And so why don't we've got a little bit of experience, so why don't we proceed? First item I'd like to do is call the roll for attendance. Vice Chair Bob Lear.
Here.
Sandy Porter.
Here.
Ben Solozinski.
Here.
Stephanie.
Here.
Jane.
Here.
Don.
Here.
Steve.
Here.
Erica.
Here.
All right, we got a full house. Given that there are no members of the commission missing, so the two alternates will participate in the discussions but will not be voting. Okay. The first item on the agenda would be our minutes. We have two sets of minutes to review rather quickly. First one is from April 21st, 2020. I believe we asked the secretary to go back and add some comments as related to the discussion with Mr. Stello and Mr. Cannon and the request for the building commission to send out correspondence to those people in reference to the issue we had. Having said that, looks like the changes were made. Any other comments for the minutes of April 21st, 2020?
Well, Frank, I have a
Just
question
when
on
you
that.
when you speak, start by giving your name.
Okay, this is Sandy, and
Got
I
it.
read these minutes. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, and I read these minutes, and I'm asking what it is that you had inserted that you wanted added to the minutes.
Well, without going into that, it does indicate, you know, that the chair was asked to write a letter. Basically, that was it.
Okay, because ordinarily you don't get to change the minutes or add anything to the minutes until the minutes come before the group as a whole.
The minutes have been for the group before, and it was decided not to proceed until those corrections were made. Having said, any other corrections or additions to the minutes as presented? Looking for a motion, Mr. Vice Chair?
I'm sorry, I got some static, Frank. What did you ask me?
I'm looking for a motion, if we could, to proceed with the minutes, if there are no other questions. I'm sorry, Bob. Did you
Frank,
make
this
that
is-
motion?
Frank, this is Don. I move that we accept the minutes as corrected.
Thank you very much. If there are no other further comments or questions,
I second.
thank you very much. Second, Steve. Please announce your name when you say something. Okay, I'm going to take the roll on the minutes of April 21st.
I can't.
Bob Lear, we might have lost Bob's connection. Sandy,
Here, yes, correct?
She's
Ben?
got to abstain.
Ben abstains. Okay, Stephanie,
Yes.
Jane, you would abstain. You were absent from that date.
The 21st, yes.
Don
Yes,
and Steve.
Yes.
Okay, Erica,
Frank, I got disconnected, so I'm back.
okay, we're voting on the minutes. Bob?
Right, yes.
Okay, great. And Erica, that was a yes. Okay, motion passed. Moving on, we have the minutes of June 2nd, 2020. This was from our last meeting. Thank you very much. Very efficient. Seem to have captured the essence of the discussions as related to 55 Sears and other things, in my opinion. Any other comments or questions or suggestions on the minutes?
I move approval.
Thank you very much. Was that
I'll
Mr. Lear?
second.
It was Mr. Lear.
Stephanie will
sec-
I'm
second.
sorry.
Thank you very much, Steph. Any other comments or suggestions? Okay,
Who made the motion to approve?
Mr. Lear.
Don?
Stephanie, Sandy?
Yes?
You
I
know,
can't vote. I
Okay,
was absent.
try and keep the dialogue down unless it's something of essence, because it's just going to make it go forward. And announce who you are before you're speaking. We have no idea. Okay, we're going to take a roll call. Mr. Lear,
Yes.
Sandy,
I have to abstain. I was
Same.
not there at the meeting.
Ben? Benjamin? Mr. Solozinski? Seems to have muted your mic, or he's... All right, we're going to proceed. Stephanie?
Yes.
Jane?
Yes.
Steve Burlingame?
Yes.
Erica?
Yes.
Ben, is that you trying to say yes in the background?
Don votes yes also.
Don, thank you very much. All right, we'll have to proceed with Ben absent from the vote. All right. We can proceed to the hearings and we continue the applications. We have actually 4 applications, and 2 of them are continued, or 2 addresses are continued from the last meeting.
I'm Bill Riley.
The one,
You know,
the
I
first,
worked right through it. Staff didn't.
the
warn
first
me
application.
if I missed the call.
Hello, who's talking, please?
237-2711.
Bill Riley's talking.
Hello.
Mr. Riley, could you mute your microphone?
Yes, I'm going to put you on speakerphone so I can hear a little bit better.
Can you please mute your microphone, folks?
Yes, I'm now on speakerphone so I can hear you better.
Who's talking, please?
I am Deborah Ecker.
All right, Deborah, could you please mute your microphone, please?
Use my microphone.
You have to turn your mic off, Deborah.
Frank, she may be calling in on a landline and can't mute.
I'm calling you on a landline.
All right, Debbie, if you could just hold off, we'll get to you. All right, the first application is 305 Main Street, which was continued from our previous meeting. And we have documentation from the applicant. Michelle, just correct me, that they want to continue this to July 21st?
Yes, Frank, I forwarded everyone the email from Attorney Norcross. They have asked for a continuance to July 21.
Okay, just for the public's information, what we did as requested at the previous meeting, we requested Sarah Korjeff, the preservation specialist from the Cape Cod Commission, to take a look at this contributing structure in the National Register District and give you some comments. There were comments that provided to the members of the commission, and hopefully Mr. I can't think of the gentleman's name, the architect. Well, the attorney is Mr. Norcross, and his applicant will take a look at those comments and provide something back to us, because there was some concern about the application as presented. So I guess we need a motion to continue the application again.
Mr. Lear so moves.
Okay, we need a second to that.
Stephanie will
I'll
second.
second.
Stephanie second, and the motion is to continue this to the July 21st meeting. There's no other comments. We'll take a roll call. Mr. Lear,
Yes.
Sandy,
Yes,
Ben? I guess we've lost Ben completely. Stephanie,
Yes,
Jane,
Yes.
Don,
Yes.
Steve,
Yes.
Erica? Michelle, could you try and get in touch with Ben?
Yes, I'll give him a call right now.
Okay, thank you very much. So this is continued to July 21st, which is our summer meeting. We have two meetings in the summer, one on July 21st and one on August 18th. And hopefully both days it's going to be raining, not as gorgeous as the weather is today. Whose idea was to go to 2:30?
I can't imagine.
Yeah, okay. All right. We get a bit organized here. The next application is application 20-015, 55 Sears Point Road. For members of the public, this application was continued with the consent of the applicant because for some reason we did not have a Form B for this particular property. It turns out, just for information, the reason the Form B did not exist is that when the listing of all the homes in Chatham was requested from the assessor's office, the issue of properties in a condominium situation were left off, and therefore the work we did with Eric Dre was missing a number of properties. I requested Eric, with consent from the community development, for him to take a site visit, which he did with myself, to 55 Sears Point, did some research, and prepared and submitted to Mass Historic Commission a Form B for the subject property, which everybody has. And I believe the applicant, Mr. Riley, you're here, I assume, right?
Yes, that's correct.
Thank you. So has. So having said that, the Form B, which I usually, before we start in the meeting, comment, indicates the house was dates of construction 1921 to 1940. Of course, connection to the Sears estate and to the Sears family. And we have an historical narrative for that. So for the public's information, whether we allow the home to be demolished or changed or not, as part of the Historical Commission's activities, we like to document all of the homes in Chatham, especially those which have historic significance. So at the conclusion of the previous meeting, we did not opine or relative to the issue of historical significance of the property.
Hey, Frank, I'm back online here.
Thank you very much, Ben. You missed a
All right.
couple of votes, but we got along without you. Thank you.
Good, all right.
The applicant has submitted some additional changes we'll go into, but at this particular point, I'd like to address the first concern that we have relative to the particular property, 55 Sears Point. There actually is a second property on that, second home on there, 24 Sears Point. And so I'd like to have some discussion as it relates from other members of the commission, as it relates to the historical significance of this colonial revival property.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
could I speak for a moment?
Absolutely.
Thank you. So Bill Riley, on behalf of the Popkin sisters, Ann Popkin, Susan Kahn. Susan Kahn is actually online with us today. We provided some additional family history, which we hope will be added to the Form B, recognizing the fact that their great-grandfather, Louis Brandeis, owned property in Chatham beginning in 1924, and that the Popkin girls spent summers growing up on property that Judge Brandeis had bought for his daughter, their grandmother, adjacent to his home. Their cousin, Paul Rauschenbusch, still lives in Justice Brandeis's home on Judge's Way off Sears Neck. So we wanted to make sure the commission members were aware of the historical aspect of the Popkin family here in Chatham and their connection with dating back to the time prior to the construction of this home. When we left last time, one issue that had been raised was the size of the windows facing the harbor.
Mr. Riley? Bill?
Yes.
Why don't you let us proceed relative to the issue of historical significance as it relates to the property? You know, generally the format has been, that's the first question of the existing property, whether or not we feel the property is in fact historical significant. And obviously you're aware, if we deem there's no historical significance to the property, then, you know, we have very little to say relative to the change.
Okay.
All right.
All right.
One question I do have, I did receive your comments, and Michelle, I assume they were sent to everybody?
I got him, Frank.
Thank you. The one question I have, Bill, is the fact that, you know, I understand the connection to the Brandeis family and the Popkins, you know, certainly people with a history in Chatham. But I'm a little confused, and there's really no connection to the current property, 55 Sears Road. Am I misreading that?
No.
Other than the fact that they're purchasing it.
That's correct.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Frank, I have a question for Mr. Riley also, if it's okay.
Yes, sir.
Bill, I read you as putting that information forward as an argument that the house is historic, or the property is historically significant. Is that why it's being submitted?
No, it's being submitted to educate the commission members as to the family history of the Brandeis Popkin family in Chatham. Not because we think the home is historically significant.
And in what way is that history relevant to our determination?
We thought it would be useful information for you to consider.
In terms of what? Not historical significance?
No, the fact that my clients have, working with their architect, have managed a design which we think mimics to a large degree the existing structure because of their history in Chatham.
Well, that's a new argument to me.
That's
but
a new
all
one.
right.
Yeah. A for effort, Bill. Okay. Michelle, can you put the Form B up?
Yes, just give me a second, Frank.
Yeah, that's okay. Well, okay, I'd like to start the discussion from my perspective. You know, I think just my comments from the previous meeting as it relates to this particular property on Sears Point and the significance of the seascape and the significance of the Sears family and their sisters, his daughters, who owned and possibly even stayed at this particular property, and as well as whether or not Mr. Sears, who certainly an architect, well-known and renowned, had anything to do with the design of the house. So, my reaction is that I feel there's some historical significance of the house and the property, but I'll leave it at that. So I'd like for other members of the commission, if you have any comments or questions or feelings on that issue, this is the first step. Is the property historical significance or not?
Frank, it's Bob. I think it's something of a stretch to say that because Mr. Sears owned the property, that somehow the building achieves historical significance, because we don't know that he had anything to do with the building.
Well, we do know that, at least from the research that was done, that Mr. Sears is an architect, yes? And
yes.
These houses were built there, for his daughters back in that particular time. I believe there's enough evidence relative to the fact that his daughters lived there and his attachment to Sears Point. From my perspective, we're not saying he definitely designed it, but it is possible he did design it. History, it's not science.
I know.
And that's my stretch, if you will, if you want to call it a stretch. I think the design of the house is significant in itself as a colonial revival house, more than 75 years old, which would categorize it as historically significant. So that's my sense. Can we ask other members to opine or jump in here? You feeling?
Sure. This is Steve.
Yes, sir.
I would, if I were voting, I would clearly say this house is not of historical significance. We know that Sears was an architect, but he was not an architect designing colonial revivals from what Eric Gray came up with. It's certainly not his thing. Certainly not an example of the type of work that he did. He may have designed it, but not within his wheelhouse ordinarily. If we get into the historical significance of houses because they're colonial revivals, we're going to have a lot of meetings and a lot of applications.
Yes.
And gotta spend a lot of time. This
Yes.
house to me is a typical large scale house from the era. But the house on Seaview Street that we'll talk about is not much different. It's a colonial revival, of which there were many in Chatham. If we decide that all colonial revivals are historically significant, we're opening up Pandora's box to the examination of many, many properties.
Well, let me just. Sorry, go ahead. Thought you were done.
No, the fact that Mr. Sears owned the property to me is a so what. If he didn't, it doesn't really mean much to me. It doesn't mean much to me that the new owners, the great grandfather had some historical influence in this country. Was a great man. But the fact
but what does that have to do? What does that have to do with the house? I mean, you're arguing that there's nothing to do with the fact that Mr. Brandeis was a great man. A thing. It has nothing to do with this current house. 100 years from now, with the Popkin house, could be considered historically significant. So
it's absolutely irrelevant. It's absolutely irrelevant. It's just like Mr. Sears' ownership to me is irrelevant. Unless somebody shows me that he designed this house, that it was somehow exalted in some fashion, but to base all this on some skepticism or
I think we got it, Steve. I mean, I think we can understand your argument, but let me just counter it to go back and read the chapter 158 relative to what makes a house historically significant. The fact that its age, its architecture, the fact that the house, most of the house stands to the way it was built, the fact that Sears's daughter lived there, the fact that Sears was a prominent individual, lived in Chatham, had multiple houses which he designed here. And the point, Sears Point, is not called Popkin Point, it's called Sears Point. So I think the argument could be made, that it is, from my point of view, historically significant. What we do about it and how we proceed is part two of this thing. Your argument that just because a house is a colonial revival, that of course, absolutely, but it's 100 years old colonial revival.
No, well, Frank, that's not clear at all. That Sears died in 1920.
That's correct.
Well, then they don't know whether he designed it before he died.
We don't know. We don't know, Bob. There's a lot.
I think we're supposed to base our decisions on some kind of factual evidence, not hypothesis.
Well,
Frank,
welcome to the Historical Commission.
Frank,
Factual information. Okay.
Frank, this is Steph speaking.
Yes.
I agree with what Bob just said. I don't think we can base it.
All right. Well, there seems to be. Let me go down the thing. Sandy, how do you feel?
Well, I tend to agree that we can't base it on the fact that, Sears built it. I apologize. I'm on my phone, and as you can hear, my dog doesn't like my talking on the phone. Okay. Sorry about that, guys. So I would have to say, I'm not sure. I don't have a real strong feeling.
Thank you. Ben?
Oh, Ben, where are you?
I'm sorry, Ben. Can you say again? Benjamin? I think we lost Benjamin. Stephanie, did you pine in on this here? Steph?
I opined.
I'm sorry, that was you feel yes or no historically significant? Not a vote, but I just want to get your sense of it. Steph?
I already opined.
Well, could you repeat it for me if you don't mind?
I don't think that we have enough factual information to base it on.
Okay, Jane?
I disagree. Am I muted?
Yes, you are, Jane. You're okay.
Oh, over there. Okay.
Go ahead, Jane.
I can't seem to unmute myself.
No, you're fine, Jane.
Can you hear me now, Frank?
All right.
Ben?
Oh,
Jane?
Who's on, Ben or Jane?
Jane?
Okay. I think it's historically significant, and to Steve's point, yes, we do have a lot of colonial architecture, and that's what we've been talking about, at least I have for the last 13 years. So it's our job to preserve history on Cape Cod, and this is a historic building. Whether or not it's connected to Sears is not as important to me as the look of it and the location and the age.
Thank you, Jane. Don?
Yes, I believe it's historically significant. And if you look at the inventory form, Mr. Griscom, who was the owner, and one of our criteria is whether it was owned by someone of significance. And he seems to be of significance in Boston history. So I feel very strongly that it's a historic significant house.
Well, not voting, but Erica, you got any opinion you want to express?
Oh, hey, Frank, can you hear me now?
Yeah, I'm looking for Erica.
Oh, this is Ben. All right.
Yes, Frank. Tend to agree with Jane. I believe that it's, we're getting to this crucial time with these buildings built in these years. And like, I'm not even counting that maybe it was built by a Sears or it wasn't. Again, I don't think that we're at these critical time for these buildings built in these years, that these homes need to be saved. They're coming up on becoming, 100 years old. And I believe it's absolutely historically significant. I'm not voting, but I do.
Thank you very much. Ben, can you give me a sense?
Yes. It appeared to me from our last discussion that this house was basically bought for a tear down. All the history of the Brandeis and all this other stuff, I think, was some smoke and mirrors. So I think the fact that it's old is not does not make it historically significant in the sense that it's special in any way. And I think because of its location, because of it's a condo, and it was bought as a tear down, I would have no objection to letting him tear it down. It just
Well,
it's old.
let's not get into tear down. The question is it historically significant or not?
Well, when we're talking about demolition or no demolition,
well, Ben,
that is tear down. So that's why I brought it. But I don't think that there's enough historical significance here as to the type of house.
All right.
As to all that you could say about this thing is it's historical from our age definition and nothing else.
Thank you, Ben.
Okay.
Right. We seem to have a mixed bag here. Needless to say, I don't agree with Mr. Burlingame and his view on historical preservation as it relates to the age of houses relative to where we are in Chatham. And you're absolutely right, Steve. We're going to have a lot more homes that are going to be torn down in Chatham in the near future. And the question is it worth saving the architecture and the streetscape of this particular house? So having said that, I guess at this particular point, unless anybody wants to say more, looking for a motion as it relates to the historical significance of the property.
I'm looking at the criteria and trying to come up with a combination. Hold on. All right. I move that the Chatham Historical Commission find that the building located at 55 Sears Point is historically significant because it is in whole or in part 75 years old or more, and the commission finds that it is associated with one or more historical persons in the history of the town or Commonwealth, and that it possesses architectural value or significance in terms of period and style. That's it.
We have a second, please.
I'll second that, Don.
Don, second. All right, any other additional discussion? Okay. Vice Chair Lear?
I do not agree. It's not. I don't think it's historically significant.
No. Sandy?
Not historically significant, sorry.
Ben?
Not historically significant.
No. Stephanie?
Not historically significant.
Jane?
I think it is historically significant.
Don?
Yes, it is.
And the chair votes yes. The motion fails 4-3. I guess I got to find another job. Okay, moving on to part 2. The applicant has provided some additional information relative to the application. Mr. Riley, do you want to comment?
Well, the Doug Dick, the architect, is on the line as well. So I'd ask him to make a brief presentation about the design.
Well, we could say that relative to the fact that the commission just voted that this colonial house is not historically significant, I guess the meeting is over. There's really nothing more that we technically can do relative to this particular application. So unless someone has objection, we go ahead and let them tear it down and do what they want to do.
Okay, we accept that.
Thank you, members of the commission.
Okay, Bill Riley signing off.
Thank you very much. Just let me get my papers together here. So,
Frank,
identify yourself, please?
excuse me, this is Michelle.
Yes, Michelle.
Did we want to have any public comment?
Oh, yeah, sorry about that. Well, I don't know if there's any public comment. Anybody wish to speak on the vote that we took? Sorry about Michelle giving me that heads up a little bit before we take the vote. Thank you. Any member of the public or listening in want to comment relative to the vote the commission just took? Hearing none, let's proceed. The next application is 20016 80 Sears Seaview Street. Michelle, do you know who's presenting that?
Yes. Bernadette McLeod is here from Ryder Wilcox, I believe, as is the owner. Bernadette, are you still with us? She was here a bit ago. Let me double check and see.
Well, I had asked her to mute a microphone, so.
I'm here.
All right.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Hold on, Bernadette.
Okay. I am representing Edward Kasabian and Anush Tatavosian. They own 80 Seaview Street, and they would like to lift the house up and put a new foundation under it for the first thing we're asking for. The house was built in it's 75 years old. It was built in 1945. The windows have been replaced with like a Harvey, vinyl window. The siding is aluminum siding on the front currently, and the rest of it is shingles, which we don't know if they've been replaced, since the house was built. Currently, there's a block foundation that's leaking water. It's got cracks in the slab, and it's leaking horribly. There's inadequate drainage around the house perimeter and standing water in the basement every time it rains. There's also been a mold problem due to the water problem. So the owners would like to raise the dwelling and replace the foundation with a poured concrete foundation with adequate drainage. Replace the current Harvey vinyl windows with Anderson 400 windows. Replace the siding with new white cedar shingles and replace the trim with AZAC or an equal composite product. We're also proposing a family room in the rear, which will only take away, the square footage to cut in a 6-foot opening into the new room from the existing kitchen dining room area. There'll be one window which will be eliminated, and it will be made into a 6-foot cased opening. They would also like to add some solar panels on new roof shingles, which the roof shingles are not original to the house anyway. So the basic loss of any historic material if it is considered historic, would be the block foundation and a little bit of exterior sheathing where there's new openings are placed. And as I said, the roof shingles have already been replaced, and the exterior siding, we do not believe is original, and the windows and trim have already been replaced.
All right.
So,
I could save you some time.
okay,
Bernadette.
yep.
I didn't mean to interrupt you, but there is no Form B on this property, which means and there is listed a no by our preservation consultant, unlike 655 Sears Point. So this house was listed as a no, and listed as a no, there are 3 forms and categories. The Historical Commission does a survey of every house in town over 50, and we put it on, would we do a Form B or not? Is the house, potentially historically significant or not? And given the age and the architecture, the preservation did not indicate it was historically significant. So I don't know, we could address that issue further with the other members of the commission. Is there any sense of the commission that this property, 80 Seaview Street, is historically significant?
Bob says no.
Bob, no?
No.
Sandy?
Sandy, no.
Ben?
No. Ben,
Stephanie?
no.
No.
Jane?
Oh,
Don?
No.
Steve? Well, that's it in terms of voting, unless Steve and Erica have something to say. So, just so you know, the intention of the Historical Commission is, at some particular point, is to bring in a process for administrative review of applications, and something like this, when there is no Form B and the preservation consultant has already pined in on the property to try and reduce the necessity for a full hearing of the commission. Bernadette, just want to let you know, something we're working on.
Okay, that's great.
Yeah, well, we'll see, right now everything is slow. So
Right.
we need to take a vote on this application in terms of its historical significance.
Frank, could I just say one thing? Oh, okay.
Who's speaking, please?
It's Jane. I just was going to say to Bernadette, it would be helpful if she could have put the dimensions and the measurements on the other side.
All right, let's move on.
No indication of any measurements.
Right. All right. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I did put the measurements on all the new stuff.
Well, it's not on mine.
All right.
It's on one existing. That's all. It'd just be helpful to have it on all.
Oh, I have it on the existing and the proposed?
Right.
I mean, it's all on the proposed, what areas being demolished.
No, you had it only on existing in mine. No dimensions on.
Oh, yeah, well, actually, that's the proposed. That's the
I don't have it
proposed.
either.
I switched them.
But there's no dimensions on it. That's what we require, I thought.
I think I put the existing and the proposed, oh, okay, I get it. I'll put the proposed on next time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jane. Okay, we seem to have a consensus that this property, 80 Seaview Street, is not historically significant. Mr. Vice Chair, can you help me?
I can. I move that the Chatham Historical Commission finds that the structure located at 80 Seaview Street is not historically significant because it does not meet any of the definitional criteria in section 158-2, A, B, C, or D, A, B, or C of the bylaw. Therefore, the commission does not impose a demolition delay.
Okay.
Second.
Who's second?
Second,
Jane.
Sandy.
Okay. You have to give your name first, please. We have no way of knowing who's talking. Okay. And will any member of the public wish to comment on this proposed motion? Hearing none. Mr. Lear,
Yes.
Sandy,
Yes.
Ben,
Yes.
Stephanie,
Yes.
Jane? Jane,
Yes.
Don?
Yes.
Okay, a motion carries it's not historically significant. Bernadette, thank you very much. Appreciate your patience.
Thank you.
Okay,
Right
Uh,
now.
that concludes the hearing portion of the meeting. We're gonna set record time here. If you would bear with me, I do have a couple of items to report that are on the agenda. We have the status of the demolition delay. You all have the statistics. I guess we haven't heard anything about 157 Cross about potentially moving it, right, Michelle?
I was contacted by one of the local real estate agents asking me for information on companies that move buildings. I provided that to her and I have not heard anything since then.
Well, that's a hopeful sign. This is a beautiful cape, which is historically significant, even though nobody important lived there. Sorry, guys. And hopefully we can find a way to save it and it won't end up in the trash like some other houses which we destroyed. Okay, the second item is 68 Shell Drive. This is a lot going on here. Got to be careful what I say and what I don't say. There's a memorandum of understanding executed between the Nicholson Family Association and the owner, Joe Giacalone, relative to potentially moving that property or part of that, the circa 1700 portion of the house, to the Nicholson Family Association. But, you know, nothing is a slam dunk and nothing happens till the fat lady sings, which means there's a lot of due diligence that is necessary to complete this deal if it does go forward. I did participate in a site visit with the Nicholson Family Association, a local archaeologist, Craig Cordier, and other people to try and date the house better and looking at potential for if it could in fact be moved and how it would be done. So stay tuned. You know, nothing's happened yet, but the people involved are working diligently to see if we can get something happen. So that's 68 Shell Drive.
Frank?
Yes,
This
sir.
is Don. Just for the record, I don't think you voted on that last motion.
Oh, that's good. I abstained. So put me down as abstention. Okay. Thank you, Don. I appreciate it. Everybody watch what you say. The selectman just joined us.
Hi, Frank.
Hello.
Mr. Chairman, how are you?
Very good. We're just wrapping up. If we could just bear with us. Okay. So that's 68 Shell Drive. And Monomoy Theater property. Actually, interesting. A lot's been happening. You know, there is a warrant that was supposed to go to this town meeting relative to creating a theater district and allow him to proceed. I believe the current situation is that will be pushed off until September, and that warrant will not appear on the ballot. Is that correct, Mr. Nicastro?
Yeah. Sorry, I just muted myself. I'm sorry. Yes, that warrant article is a petition article, and all the petition articles, they're printed on the warrant. There'll be a motion to postpone all of them indefinitely, and the selectmen have committed to putting all those petition articles on the warrant for the special town meeting on September 19th. We did endorse unanimously the Monomoy Theater. That got our recommendation. I believe the Finance Committee unanimously recommended it as well.
Well, thank you very much. A little more activity there. We've been in touch with Mass Historic Commission through Craig Clark, the owner of the property, as it relates to the application for a National Register designation of the Monomoy Theater. It's proceeding, but like everything else right now in the world, It's proceeding slowly, but we try to, I guess, try to stay on top of it and assist wherever we can to Mr. Clark and his company to make this project go forward, especially from an historic preservation point of view. The only other thing I'd like just to add, there was correspondence which I just gotten and I will share. In fact, Ally has a copy. It was from the Sarah Korjeff Cape Cod Commission relative to a group called the Architectural Heritage Foundation in Boston is hoping to create a grant program for historic restoration, rehabilitation of projects to foster economic development in a rural community. Guess what? Chatham is a rural community. So I've been corresponding with Sarah Korjeff, who also thinks the Monomoy Theater could fit on that project, and then also passing it on to Mr. Clark to see if there's some other way we can help preserve this historic part of Chatham. So that's a positive thing. We'll stay close. Just quickly, the South Chatham Village Hall, South Chatham Village National Register District. Again, Mass Historic assures me they are proceeding with the application, and but it's going to take at least a year or so before it gets consummated to the National Park Service. That's kind of it from your chair. By the way, there are a couple of appointments that are up. I guess Jane and Don, Erica and Steve, alternates voted on every year. And hopefully you guys have appointments to be interviewed by the Board of Selectmen. And just
I do, Frank.
Thank you very much, Erica. I guess that's where we are at that particular element. Our next meeting is July 21st. And other than the fact that we have 305 Main Street, and Michelle, I think you said there's one other application?
Yes, there is, just one more.
Okay. So hopefully it'll be a short meeting, and hopefully it'll be raining. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, is there anything else that you would like to discuss before we conclude this meeting?
I move we adjourn.
I suspect Dean wanted to say something, no?
Yep,
Oh.
Hamilton will second.
Thank you.
No, I did not. Whoever said that, I think it was Don.
Yeah.
No, I just told Frank I would join the latter part of the meeting when we got into the.
I'm sorry, I saw you there and I thought maybe you wanted to give us some great update.
Thank you. I look forward to I think we have, Frank said we have 4 interviews. I can't remember when they're scheduled because we're interviewing every day these days.
Right.
I think the schedule is June 24th.
Okay.
In the morning at 9 o'clock, at least mine is.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Okay, we're going to take
Chairman?
a roll call for adjournment.
Mr. Chairman, this is Don.
Yes, sir.
I believe this may be Jane's last meeting on the Chatham Historical Commission because it's my understanding.
Nope. I don't think so.
Oh, okay.
Don, some other things just took place. I'm trying to exchange with either Erica or Steve so that I can stay on at least one more year.
All right, let's, unfortunately, we don't make those great decisions. The
I stand
selectmen.
corrected.
That's okay,
You
Don.
didn't know it. I didn't know it.
I do want to now say something because I just, when Frank and I spoke this morning and Jane emailed me as well, and I can only speak for myself, but my prediction is that the selectmen will honor whatever course Jane wishes to take.
Wow, thank you very much. Well, I really like the organization, but I was hesitant to re-opt because of my age. And
Jane, you're only 78. That's how old I am.
yeah, I know you're 78, but I'm 84. I'm
okay.
87.
Jane, you don't seem 84. You're only as old as you act, and you don't
I
act.
can't help it. I have so many medical problems, but anyway, I just didn't. I was almost in tears, sending you that note, Frank, that I was gonna leave.
Well, hopefully, Jane, hopefully we figured out, we put our great minds together and we found a way to keep you around for a little bit. All right?
Thank you.
All
I
right,
didn't know
let me,
here.
ladies and gentlemen, if there's no other comment, I'd like to take a roll call on adjournment. Thank you
Okay.
very much. Mr. Lear,
Yes.
Sandy,
Yes.
Ben,
Yes.
Stephanie,
Yes.
Don,
Yes.
and the chair votes yes. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Short meeting, guys. We kept it under an hour.
Yes.